Welcome to the MVP Show. Today we're chatting with 13 times Microsoft MVP David Jennaway. Mate, that's a long innings so far inside the Microsoft Business Applications MVP program. We talk about all types of things, his experiences across his career, and we even have a bit of a discussion on, SharePoint versus Dynamics 365. Which do you choose, and who wins when your organization can do one or the other? Anyhow, I hope you enjoy this episode. For full show notes, go to nz365guide.com/104. Now, let's get on with the show. David, welcome to the MVP Show.
Thank you. Good to hear you.
David, just did some, quick little research on your background, and I see that you've been a Business Applications MVP, or whatever version of it was before today, for 13 years. Does that sound right?
It does, and it does sound both right and a bit weird, actually. Just be doing something so similar for so long.
You must have been one of the longest-standing MVPs now that make up that kind of core team that was on from day one.
Yeah, but there's still some who've got longer than me, so yeah, it's good to see there's still a few of us.
Still, it's impressive, man. It's impressive that you've gone that distance. That's a good few years, and when the product is only 16 years old, really in market. So from CRM 1.2.
Yeah, you started from 1.2 as well, and I think it was a 1.0, but that was only in the States. So yeah, 1.2 was when.
So David, where are you from? Where do you reside in the world?
So I live in the UK. I live in York in the UK. So I've essentially lived in the UK pretty all the time. Originally I was down in Oxford, but I moved up to York probably about 12 years ago now.
And so is this the York that's famous for the Grand Old Duke of York?
It is indeed, yes, that's the one.
I was doing a day trip up around that way. I didn't go as far as York and came across some castle we went and viewed. And the lady of the house had been courted by the Grand Old Duke of York. And I thought that was very interesting that it's, what you hear in stories. Yeah, very interesting. So tell us a bit about, what you do for your day job and what do you do when you're not working?
Okay, so let's start with a day job. So I've got one of those made-up job titles, which is Head CRM Architect for Core Technology, based in London. So I'm responsible for making sure that we deliver anything with CRM to our customers and do it correctly. So that covers anything from pre-sales and scoping to make sure that on any of our projects, then yes, what we're proposing and what we're offering is appropriate for the customer. And then during implementation, I'm an escalation route and a technical escalation for our consultants while we're doing the project, and able to sort of drop in on any of the projects if appropriate. And similarly, then just also have sort of catch-ups with customers sort of post-go live, and hopefully keep them happy.
Tell us a bit about your home life.
So, I'm fairly active. I sort of spend quite a bit of time cycling and specifically racing cyclocross, which gets me both out of the house and very muddy, which is a good side. So that's sort of both in summer and what we call winter, but essentially early sort of for us from about September through to January. So that's racing and some training, parts of that. Another side, on the active side, is as much as I can, I try and get out skiing, which is mostly out in the European Alps, although we can ski in Scotland, which is options for getting there on a weekend. And I've also got my wife's family live out in Sweden, so visiting out there quite often. So that's what I spend quite a bit of my time doing.
Very active, very active. So are you British or are you French?
British.
So, but I see you can speak French as well. Is that right?
Yes, it's dropping off a little bit. I spent three winter seasons working out in Switzerland, in French-speaking Switzerland, soon after university, so sort of my early 20s, which again was the skiing side. So, and that was working for local employers. So I was working in ski shops, working in bars. So yeah, that was when I got some of that French, but it's kind of drops off every year, and then I go back get back either in summer or winter and start speaking French, and it takes a few days, and then it kind of gets back into rhythm with it, and then I don't speak it again for a while.
Well, I'm impressed that you picked it up so well. So you're just 3 years there to start with.
Yeah, I mean, we did some at school, and then yes, it was it's sort of 3 lots of about 4 or 5 months, and I also spent another few months in France as well.
So how did you originally get involved in CRM? Well, specifically Dynamics.
Yes, so my background in IT was originally IT training on Microsoft technologies, development and server technologies. Then in 2000, four of us left the company we've been working for to set up our own company. And we spent about 4 years doing general Microsoft technologies, both in terms of training and consulting, which kind of worked, but we were always a bit at the depending, and we didn't have anything particular we were targeting or specializing in. And we decided, well, actually, that wasn't really going to grow too much. So we were really just looking for something to pick as a technology to pick up on. Because we'd necessarily had to look at store information about our customers, we sort of built our own internal CRM system, and we tried selling it, and we did once, realized that we weren't actually a software company in terms of selling and doing software.
What did you build it in?
That was built on Outlook Web Access. So this is when you could actually sort of build web-based applications using essentially around Outlook. So we had the Outlook integration side, and then we had a quite nasty sort of style of trying to use the Outlook Web Access web store as a relational database in ways that it really shouldn't have been trying to do that.
Yeah. So it must have had some limitations, as in from a storage side of things.
Yeah, it had some. The biggest problem we had was actually getting useful reporting out from it.
So you're talking about you're running that really on Exchange server, were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
so we essentially did extensions into Exchange Server, it did actually work because it was quite a nice extensible structure. So we'd realised you're doing a CRM system and you need to customise and add fields, and it did actually work quite nicely from that. But I'd say the reporting was not there, and we didn't have the sort of investment to actually do the development and maintain the code. But we had at least got some idea of what the CRM world was like. Realised we didn't want to write our own. And then I have no idea who actually first noticed the fact that Microsoft had written this thing called CRM, and just about to release it in the UK and outside the US. And we thought, well, we could start looking at that for our internal system. And well, it's new technology, which is always good to sort of get in on something new rather than having any sort of existing competition, and well, let's see where we go with that, pretty much. So that's how that worked. One of the original people in there wasn't that keen on it. He was more infrastructure side. So essentially that became 3 of us, and we essentially relaunched the company as doing CRM. And
so what was
didn't really have a
clue
what was going to happen. That was Excitation Limited. Yeah.
And I take it Excitation's become Core now, is that right?
Yes, we were bought by Core as the CRM team 4.5-5 years ago.
Yeah, I just noticed that the URL to Excitation redirected there, so I assume something like that must have happened.
Indeed, yes.
Interesting. So tell me, what did you know about CRM 1 for Microsoft? Did you know much about it? Like, I don't have much knowledge of CRM 1.
Main thing was you couldn't have custom entities. So all you had was the sort of a standard set. It had, I can vaguely remember what the interface kind of looked like. So you could write some, you could customize a bit. You could you could create plugins. It had a structure for that. So it had at least the basics, but it was essentially I think we had sales and customer service. We didn't have anything in the marketing at that point. So we had opportunities, we had cases, and we did some. I think we only did 2 or 3 implementations on 1.2. Then we were waiting for CRM 2, which would then allow us to do lots more. And then Microsoft didn't ever release CRM 2.
Yeah, why? Do you know why?
what I heard of it was essentially what they did with two was they did a lot of the internal changes which would support things like custom entities, but didn't actually do very much in terms of what just a sort of an initial view of it for the users would look like. And they went through and they went and showed this to a few of their favourite or potential customers and just got not very good feedback saying, well, yeah, that doesn't look any different. And then they thought, okay, and then they so essentially pulled two, and then with three is when they also introduced the marketing module. So then they had the extra things that they could offer through. But essentially, it gave us that. It wasn't huge long. It's probably sort of the order of 6 or 9 months, but it was quite a bit of a gap when you're thinking, hey, new version coming. Oh, no, there isn't.
So then how did you kind of run the sales side of that business to actually, it's fine, like you installed it yourself, you started using it, but how did you then start to, how did people find out that you guys could actually do it for them as well?
But I wasn't doing the sales side, so that was my colleague Mark Dendy, who was our sort of sales and chief exec. So he was the one who had to find us for customers. He'd worked quite a lot with Microsoft, so we had connections through to Microsoft in the UK. So I think that's where quite a few things are, because we'll get some of the leads through from Microsoft. We'd necessarily built up various contacts from doing training work, other consulting work. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I left it to Mark, and then when he actually when we got somebody who was interested, and then I sort of came into it to work out what they wanted and could we actually do this or not, and quite a bit of learning as you went along, because the customer and say, oh, can we do this? I'm like, let's find out.
So how much did the XRM story play into the projects that you were doing early on there?
I mean, we didn't have the XRM sort of terminology, but we always, I mean, from our side, was always looking that we were essentially selling our services. So the fact that we could actually be doing things rather than just saying, here's a product, off you go, start paying Microsoft some license fees, do some customization. We're always quite happy with the idea there would be customization, but still keeping it within the limits of doing, in almost all cases, supported customizations. In the early days, there were a few times when we couldn't, but at least being open on that as an option. But he essentially liked the idea that you could take a product, but then there's quite a lot of customization that you could be doing it to make it work for the end customer. So that was the structure, and we also essentially built up as we went through. You're doing something for one customer, but if you are writing plugins or coming up with a particular sort of design of how you might actually do some extra entities, are thinking of that as something as reusable. So we were building up our own library of reusable code, reusable customizations, which we just sort of kept doing pretty much as we went through it.
Where did that kind of lead you to? Was that so did ultimately someone just knock on your door and say, we would like to purchase your company, and you went from there? How many projects did you do all up? How many do you think you've done across your career so far? At least touched or been involved in some shape or form.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure we would get to 3 figures, but I've had something involved in. That's probably, I mean, there's going to be there's a few customers when we've done effectively several projects now, across versions and upgrades, and that's ones for which there'd be some form of paying type work, because ultimately there's probably about, not many, it's probably about 10-20% of implementations that we did as Excitational's core when I had hardly any involvement. So I've been involved in the majority. There are a few ones when I didn't really get much involvement, but the majority of them I've done. So I think if we add it up now, because it is what, as you said, 13 years plus a couple more before that, and it's been pretty well all of that time I've been doing almost always CRM. I do a few bits around data and SQL. Most of that are in relation to CRM projects anyway.
So what about your blog? Tell me about your blog.
My blog it looks horrible because it was just something I started putting together on Blogspot
Yeah, a long
and
time ago,
never,
right?
never changed it. It's one of those that, it's like,
I find it interesting your CRM MVP blogs, and you've got Shan MacArthur there, you've
I
got
know,
Ronald
yes, I've got a
Lehman,
very old set of links, haven't I?
Mitch Milam's still on there,
It dates me somewhat, yes.
Jim Wang, Imran is even on there. My gosh, that's a name I haven't seen in a long time. Guy Riddle's still there. I wonder if it actually works. This link. I was, oh, Guy Riddle goes to a OneDrive live folder. Oh my gosh!
What's he got in there? Excellent.
No, that was weird. It's taken me to my OneDrive as in like because I'm logged in on my device. But yeah, Frank Lee's on there. Oh yeah, his blog still works. Yeah, okay. So, but like looking back in 2007, you wrote 17 blog posts that year. 2008, 31 blog posts for the year. 2009, 26. Mate, you're pretty prolific.
I was. It's gone down a little bit sort of since. Yeah, it was.
You've got two up for this year. That's not too bad.
Yeah, it was. Because especially the early days, there's a lot of just trying new things, and you just get. Because there was quite a few around reporting, around development, around customizations, and it kind of, to an extent, using it of you get one idea of something that might be useful, and then okay, let's just pursue it a little bit further. So a few things are ones which, and again, dating me a lot, going back to way before GitHub, but putting up sort of sample bits of code and just using it, to essentially explore ideas and putting that information up there. And I mean, there's some of them that are actually essentially just reference points for me. I will go back to that. Yes, how did I do that? What was that registry key value? Or how do I find that set of information? So yeah, that was how that. But yes, I haven't really worked much on design. What I should probably do is keep that sort of history of all those old MVP links, and then maybe update it to be a bit more current. But maybe have a history of who it used to be.
Yeah, definitely keep the history up there. I just think some of them probably you can remove the links because they go to Never Neverland. But yeah, very cool. I like it. It's good to see, all our history because they're kind of like a lot of time checks, even going through the technology here, SQL Server, then SQL Server 2008, SQL Server 2012. It's, very interesting. You did a bunch on plugins, 13 posts on plugins. Yeah. Wow, very good, very good. Really, great to see that history there. You're right. Wow. Okay. So what does the world look like for you now? With Dynamics, 365 is the current, the first party apps, and now the Power Platform is where everything's going. How has that affected what you do today?
It's one of those when it's not yet made a huge difference. But it's one when I've been sort of thinking it will be making a difference, but we're not quite seeing it yet. So, and just a little bit, we essentially do the Dynamics work we've got two distinct types of customers. We have one area which are what we call membership organizations, and we've built over time essentially a set of extensions and accelerators on membership. And the membership implementation, they're quite involved. Effectively, it's their main line of business system. And you're also you're using the core functionality in terms of contacts, organizations, the activities, but then extending out with some of our custom entities. But you're essentially still treating the Dynamics platform as we had for essentially all the last 15 years to an extent. So that hasn't substantially changed. Then the other side is just more general use of Dynamics, of which the majority of those are really still relatively simple in terms of the scope of it, mostly around the sales and marketing, making use of some of the features like Sales AI. So we're sort of still picking out, great, something extra we can put in, something else we can offer as part of the implementation. But it's not substantially changing the way the projects work yet. I think there's potential when this landscape may change a bit more. especially around the whole power apps, power side, more on the use of flow. We do, as an organisation, we've got, I'm looking after the Dynamics 365 side. We've then got essentially the original history of Core was heavily into the SharePoint and Office 365. So essentially we've run SharePoint projects, we've run Office 365 projects, we've run Dynamics 365 projects. We've done a few things where it's for full set together, but that's been more the exception. Whereas I think what we'll probably be seeing, especially in the next couple of years, is it becoming better integrated across the loads. So I'll have a more of an impact just in terms of how we run our projects. So I think that's where we're seeing the biggest changes. But it's still be interesting times next couple of years, I think.
Yeah, for real. One of the questions I've got a lot, over the years I've heard a lot is anything you can build in Dynamics, I could build in SharePoint. Have you come across that, and what are your thoughts?
You have a lot of when you can say, yes, you could. I mean, essentially, with many types of implementation, you've got a choice of technologies. Yes, you could. Whether that's a good idea is definitely another question. I'd still say, and I'm going to be putting my sort of technical sort of hat on in terms of data storage. The fact that SharePoint, ultimately the data is stored in a relational structure, but you don't get to that immediately. You can't directly query it. Whereas within CRM, it is a much more proper relational structure with relationships, one to many, many to many. Essentially, for being able to have structured data that you can report on, it's so much more that you can do with Dynamics compared to what you're getting with SharePoint. And that's one of the parts, because ultimately, if you are doing things with Dynamics and around the CRM side, almost all the data is structured data. You've got the documents and the other data, which is much more appropriate for SharePoint. So yes, you could say, yes, I could build all of this in SharePoint. You could say I could build all of this in Dynamics 365, and I could store my documents in Dynamics 365, or I can use a combination. And necessarily, you're also going to get driven by, which technologies do people use? I mean, from our side, great, we know each of them, so we can pick the appropriate technology. And sure, I'm going to be biased towards saying, I'm going to start by thinking that's how I do it in Dynamics 365. Whereas I've got colleagues that say that's how I do it in SharePoint. But it's, I'm not going to be sort of saying everything should be Dynamics. There's going to be cases for using, different technologies as appropriate.
So if you're in a scenario that you thought, you're exactly, you had two teams, you had the SharePoint team there, within your organization, you were kind of, saw what the customer was needing, that Dynamics was the best fit. How do you have that conversation with the SharePoint folks, to ultimately get to a decision around which technology to use? What does it, is there something core that you could say it distills down to?
We've had a few when we've got to that, and it's, I come back to similar to what I was saying in terms of how much is it structured data. And by structured, you're talking about, I'm storing things in particular fields compared to unstructured, which is more documents and talking about a taxonomy of how do you tag and identify data in that way. And quite often there's going to be parts of either, but there's going to be and you're really bringing in the customer as well as to what is their main focus. What are they actually, what's important? Is there a particular way you want to start on it in terms of a phasing of the approach? So, it's not purely a technical decision. It necessarily has to involve a customer. But that's the way I'd, pretty much always start it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. It is definitely a debatable topic and has gone on for years. So our time's flowing. Just like some end questions, some wrap up questions for you, and these are kind of like quick fire. They're designed to kind of get that first answer that comes out of your mouth type thing. If you could live one moment in your life again, what would you choose and why?
Live one moment again?
Yeah,
Ooh.
relive it.
I don't know. It will probably be one of my sporting things in terms of chucking myself down a hill somewhere, whether it's got skis on, whether it's got a bike, whether I'm on a bike. But I know. Oh, well, I'll go with. Because I both ski and I snowboard. And I just had one when I was in the States, actually. I haven't skied much in the States. And it's just the start of the season. And essentially just got to the top of the hill, put my snowboard on, just started cruising down, and everything just worked absolutely sort of perfectly. And just sort of every turn nice and smooth. And essentially the first one. And then just sort of got to the bottom lift. One of the guys running the lift said, "Wow, you were really going for that." And I was thinking, I wasn't. I was just having a nice, gentle cruise, actually. Just one of those. It all sort of worked.
What would you advise your younger self?
Essentially, I was reasonably confident at most times. And essentially saying, definitely be willing to do things differently. So don't feel that you have to follow what everybody else is doing. And I think I did that anyway. I don't think I need to be told that, but probably giving myself at least reassurance that will work.
And the final one I have for you is, what really motivates you?
It's a combination of there's levels of having fun. That's a bit too generic. So pushing, learning something new, whether it's learning on technology, whether it's getting new skills on a bike. Yeah, just keeping pushing things in some way or other, and finding new solutions, new things to do. So
I like it. David, it's been great to have you on the show. If people want to connect with you online, where can they find you?
Essentially, they can try me via LinkedIn. Send me something on that. It's just David Jennaway. So feel free to contact me there. Otherwise, there's this nice dated blog that I've got, which is mscrmuk.blogspot.com. Because I'm not very up with all these other social media things. I'm sure I'll be putting up. I'm being encouraged to do things more on Twitter, but I sort of find that actually the sorts of things I want to post are a little bit longer than come with Twitter. But essentially, go for a blog. So mscrmuk.blogspot.com.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you have questions about becoming an MVP, feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media channels. And if you enjoyed listening to our show, please hit any of the social media buttons and share this content with your friends. Full show notes can be found at nz365guide.com/104. See you next week.